The sermon text for this morning is from the Song of Solomon, chapter 2 and chapter 8. My beloved speaks to me and says to me,
"Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. For now the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away."
And from chapter 8, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is strong as death, passion fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a raging flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If one offered for love all the wealth of one's house, it would be utterly scorned. Word of the Lord.
Glory to you, O Lord.
As you may have noticed, I certainly did when I first read today's sermon text, it's unique. I'm going to pose a question as we start out. What is your initial reaction to today's sermon text? You can think about that a bit now, maybe a bit through the week. I thought it would be helpful, at least it was helpful for me as I prepared to do a bit of research, and it's quite interesting. I guess I could say if you come back as far as a reaction to today's sermon text with a question of your own, something along the line of, what in the world is it even doing in the Bible? It wouldn't be unusual. The text is obviously a love song between a man and a woman, filled with language and provocative imagery that for many at the time that it was written, and maybe even yet today, seemed appropriate. But modern readers aren't the only ones that were startled, to say the least, about the content of the Song of Solomon, or the Hebrew Song of Songs. Its inclusion in the canon of Scripture was a matter of debate among a number of theologians, rabbis in the first century, and according to some of the research I did, some considered it little more than a drinking song. I might have been carrying it a little far, but that's what some thought. But the matter was settled at that time by one of the great theologians, whose name probably you don't remember any more than I did, but it was Rabbi Akiba, who said, "The whole world is not worth the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the scriptures are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holy of holies." Early and medieval Christians shared this high opinion of the song, as is evidenced by the fact that one respected writer wrote numerous homilies on the song and a 10-volume commentary on it. In the Middle Ages, the song was the subject of more attention than any other Old Testament book. And another writer, Bernard of Clairvaux, in the 12th century, wrote 86 sermons on the song and didn't get past chapter 2. Obviously, it generated quite a bit of attention. So what is it about this book that inspired such enthusiasm, not only back then, but on through the centuries? Modern scholars are almost unanimous in viewing the song as a celebration of intimate love between a man and a woman. For Jewish and Christian interpreters of previous centuries, however, it described the mutual love of God for Israel, or for Christ and the church. Both interpretations can be supported by the text. At its most basic level, the Song of Solomon is indeed a celebration of human love. It consists primarily of dialogue between a man and a woman. There's no explicit narrative plot in the book. The scenes are connected instead by similar recurring themes or features: passion, descriptions of physical beauty, memories of past encounters, and longing for the lover's presence. At this point, now that we have a bit of history, maybe it's a good time. I think we can say that love is expressed in many ways, and we all have our own memories or thoughts of maybe where we grew up, associations that we've had over the years. And I'm going to invite you at this time, if you would like to comment on where you've seen love active in your life, whether among individuals, groups, certain occasions or events in your life. I did get a little feedback last night, but I'm not going to demand it of you. But if you feel that you, after giving that a little thought, I have a few of my own that I'll pass along too, but I'll give you. Yes?
My brother, who just turned 65, got remarried recently, just adopted, but took on in, and maybe is adopting 3 foster children, starting with age 4 and 7 and 11. Ooh, that's love.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Weddings?
Pardon?
Weddings?
Yes, weddings. Baptisms, I think. We had one just recently here at church, an 8-year-old girl, just a week or so on Wednesday evening. Those, you know, love certainly shows at a time like that. At that particular baptism from the little girl herself, but of course, parents, grandparents. We just had a baptism recently of the youngest grandchild. It was very special. But love is expressed in many different ways, and I think back, I read the text that we read today, and then I think of the environment that I grew up in, which I've always felt I was very fortunate to grow up where I did. But certainly the expressions of love would not have paralleled anything that we're reading in this text today. Probably went just the opposite. It was probably very, maybe we'd say, laid back. Not a lot of hugging and kissing, especially in public, that I can remember. But I think of one couple in particular and how love changes over the years or matures or takes on a different, I don't know, just a different way, I guess. I remember when I was in high school, and a couple a little bit older than I, that at any of the school dances, they were obviously high school sweethearts. And they obviously had a lot of affection for each other, and they loved to dance, and it was very evident. I maybe envied them a bit. He was a very good athlete, and I was a little bit younger, and of course I wanted to be just like him. But I also know that as life went on for that couple, she became very ill in midlife, I guess I would say. And so for many years, his life was dedicated to being there for her. And I'm sure many of you have those kinds of memories that you can remember too from friends, neighbors, maybe family. So in that particular case, you know, he cared for her until she died. So love is expressed in many different ways. And certainly we see God, I think, present in our lives too. And you probably have your own memories. I hope you do. I know that I certainly do. And I think here sometime in the last year when we had kind of a testimonial opportunity, I related it, but I'll just briefly say again that I think Ann and I were brought together at a time when we had known each other for many years. We went to high school together. But then I'd been halfway around the world and back. she'd finished college. Then both parents were very, very ill. And she was home caring for her mother, and I happened to come back to my home ground at the same time. I guess we supported each other at that time, and we reconnected, and I can't help but feel that I saw God's love in action there as we were brought together at a time where it was helpful for each. That's all I think we need of my remembrances. You've certainly given yours, but obviously love is expressed in many different ways. One final point today that I think is quite important, and it came up from my searching out commentary on this particular text. This is one of only two biblical books, Esther and the Song of Songs, where there's no mention of God. The poems, as we've said, are spoken by a man and a woman, and the chorus that periodically comments on what is happening between two lovers. Unlike most books in Scripture, the woman's voice is clearly heard. As you may have noticed, I had Anne read the dominant major part of the text this morning, because I thought it was appropriate that, as the commentary I read stated, the woman's voice is dominant in close to 75% of the poems. Quite unusual, especially for the time in which this was written. In the reading of the sermon text today, we heard her voice as she reminisces and anticipates love. And this isn't a shy and reserved voice. We'll say again, my lover spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me. Later in verse 16, she affirms, my beloved is mine, and I am his. And frequent references to nature in verses 11 and 12. See, the winter is past, the rain's over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth, the season of singing has come. These indicate that both understood their love to be in agreement with the goodness of God's creation. Perhaps this text was included in the Bible and chosen as our sermon text today to counter the many biblical references comparing the adulterous woman to Israel's idolatry. And what better way to make that contrast than a positive portrayal with a woman's voice preeminent. As I prepared for today's message, I came to the realization or understanding that in today's world, when movies and music simultaneously extol and exploit love distorted, abused, and taken for granted, and when there are women's shelters to protect women and their children from domestic and or family violence, and in a day and time when human trafficking rivals the drug trade for illegal financial gain, and when headlines daily affirm that women around the globe are kidnapped, raped, and disrespected, this is a time when we needed to hear Song of Songs. We need to hear voices that speak boldly of true love. We need to be reminded of what love can be. Scholars tell us there was much debate, as we've mentioned, whether to include this book in the sacred text. I would say the Bible is richer and the world forever blessed for those who won the argument for its inclusion. And I think it's very fitting that we close this commentary or sermon, whatever you want to call it, on the text today with one of the most simple statements, but one of the most appreciated in song, a song of God's love for us.